My name is Naomi Brooks. I'm 34 years old, and until that Thursday night, I believe stability wasn't something you stumbled into. It was something you built, carefully, quietly, without leaving cracks that could collapse later. That belief shaped everything: my work, my routines, my relationships, especially my judgment. Or at least, I thought it did. If I had $1 for every time my boyfriend Daniel called me steady, I probably could have paid off my condo twice over. Instead, I was the one covering nearly everything in our life, because stability, to me, meant carrying more when the person you loved needed time to figure things out. Daniel was 30, charming in a way that didn't demand attention, but somehow always received it anyway. When we met, that charm felt grounding, soft, easy. Now looking back, I think it was something else. Something that knew how to avoid responsibility. Daniel was the kind of person people called fun when they meant exhausting. At first, that energy pulled me in. He could turn a boring Tuesday into rooftop drinks, a random Saturday into a last-minute road trip, a quiet dinner into candles, playlists, outfit changes, and something that felt like a scene from a movie. But after about a year, I started noticing something underneath it. Everything had to be a moment, a performance. If I disagreed with him, it became a speech. If I asked for a heads up before he invited people over, it became control. If I wanted one quiet night at home, suddenly I was killing the vibe. And then there were the threats. Not full breakups, just strategic ones. Maybe I should just go. Maybe you'd be happier alone. Maybe we need space since you're so impossible lately. At first, I treated those words like drama. Eventually, I started hearing them as information. The final blow-up happened on a Friday night over something that sounded small, but wasn't. I got home from work around 6:30 and immediately knew something was off. There were 2 air mattresses in my living room, not deflated, not stored, set up, prepared, like guests were already expected. I checked my phone, a group text from Daniel. Him, his sister, her boyfriend. 6 nights. They were apartment hunting, and apparently staying here. I stood there for a second, staring at the air mattresses. Then I looked at him. You invited 2 people to live here for a week and didn't mention it? He didn't even hesitate. They're my family, Naomi. I let out a slow breath. That doesn't answer the question. He rolled his eyes immediately. Why do you make everything difficult? I almost laughed at that. It's not difficult to ask before volunteering my home. That was it. The switch flipped. Suddenly I was selfish, cold, too rigid, impossible to build a life with. He started pacing the kitchen, talking faster, louder, like if he stacked enough words on top of each other, they would turn into logic. I stayed calm, which he hated, because calm doesn't give chaos anything to push against. Finally, he grabbed his jacket and his keys. I'm going to Mia's, he said, already halfway to the door. I need a break from your energy. I looked at him. Okay. That word landed wrong. He paused, turned slightly, like he expected something else. What, that's it? He asked. I shrugged. You said you needed space. He stared at me for a second longer, like he was waiting for me to chase him, to argue, to pull him back into the performance. I didn't. He left at 8:17. I remember because I checked the doorbell app to make sure the garage closed. At 9:04, my phone buzzed. You really don't care if I leave. I stared at the message for a moment before replying. I care, I just won't beg. No response. At 10:31, another message. Maybe take the weekend and think about how you treat people. That one I didn't answer. I took a shower, watched half a show, went to bed. Saturday morning around 8:40, I sent one message. Let me know when you want to pick up what you need. We should probably take some space. Simple, clean, no drama. At 8:52, he sent the message that ended everything. We're not done until I say we're done. I read it once. Then again, and something in me just stopped. Not anger, not hurt. Stillness. Final. I typed back. Good thing you don't get a vote. Then I put my phone down, and I started packing. Not angry packing. Not chaotic. Finished packing. His shoes into boxes, jackets into garment bags, toiletries into a plastic bin. I wrapped his expensive watch in a soft cloth so he couldn't later say I scratched it. I coiled his chargers neatly, labeled them, separated what he had bought from what had always been mine. By 11:30, everything was ready. 7 boxes, 2 bags, 1 laundry basket full of things he insisted we needed. At noon, I called a locksmith. Changed the locks. Not because I was afraid. Because I was done negotiating. At 12:14, my phone lit up. Daniel calling. Once. Twice. 8 times. Then the text started. Are you serious? Open the door. You always do this. I'm coming over right now. You don't get to decide this alone. I replied once. Pickup window is 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Bring whoever you want. I'll have your things ready. At 1:57, he showed up with his sister and enough attitude to fill the entire hallway. I was already outside my condo door, boxes stacked neatly behind me. He looked at them, then at me, and laughed. Wow, you packed me up like I died. I met his eyes. No, I packed you up like you moved out. His sister, Paige, stepped in with that careful, fake reasonable tone people use when they already know they are standing beside the person who caused the problem. Naomi, come on. He was upset. You both said things. I looked at her, then back at Daniel. I didn't text him that he got to decide whether I was allowed to end a relationship. He texted me that. Paige glanced at him, just for a second. Small, quick, but I saw it. Daniel crossed his arms, jaw tight. You know what I meant. I held his stare. I actually don't. That was the moment he changed. You could almost feel it. The shift from offended to theatrical. His voice got louder. His hands started moving. He angled his body just enough to make sure anyone coming down the hallway would hear the right parts and miss the rest. So this is it, he said, with that bright, wounded disbelief he used when he wanted to look like the one being abandoned. After 2 years, you're just throwing me out because I needed one night away? I didn't raise my voice. I'm ending it because you treat every disagreement like a hostage negotiation. His face hardened. He took one step closer and lowered his voice, suddenly intimate, suddenly sharp. You are not doing this to me. I didn't move. It's already done. For a second, he just stared at me, waiting, watching, like he still believed there had to be another layer beneath my calm, a real scene, a breakdown, tears, something he could use. When it didn't come, he kicked one of the boxes. Not hard enough to break it, just hard enough to make a point. Paige hissed his name under her breath, embarrassed now. Daniel looked at me and started listing the usual charges. Heartless, cold, immature, insane. Like if he said enough ugly things quickly enough, one of them would finally crack me open. I told him his winter jackets were in the tall box, and his blender was packed separately so it wouldn't get damaged. That made him angrier, because chaos hates organization. It hates labels and tape and clean endings. They loaded everything in 2 trips. On the second trip, Paige stayed by the elevator, and Daniel came back alone. He stood in front of me, empty-handed now, eyes dark in a way that had nothing to do with sadness. You always act like calm means right. There it was, the thing that had bothered him most about me from the beginning. Not that I argued, that I didn't perform my emotions in a way he could control. I said, no, calm just means I'm done arguing with what's obvious. His mouth tightened. For one strange second, he looked like he wanted to do 3 different things at once. Yell, cry, kiss me. He chose none of them. He just turned and walked away. I thought that would be the ugliest part. I was wrong. By Monday, Daniel had turned our breakup into a publicity campaign. First came the messengers. Mia texted me that I had embarrassed him and should at least meet him for coffee because closure mattered. Then his cousin Mason messaged me on Instagram saying real women didn't throw men out over one fight. Then Paige called me from a number I didn't know and said Daniel was spiraling and I needed to stop being stubborn. That word almost made me laugh. Stubborn. As if refusing to be manipulated were a personality flaw. I sent Paige one screenshot. Just one. The exact text. We're not done until I say we're done. Good thing you don't get a vote. She went quiet. Not performative quiet. Real quiet. The kind that arrives when a version of the story collapses in real time. After a few seconds, she said softly, I didn't know he sent that. I leaned back against my kitchen counter and looked around the condo. My condo, my name on the mortgage, my dishes in the cabinets, my silence finally settling back into the walls. Most people don't tell the whole story, I said, when the whole story makes them look ridiculous. Paige didn't defend him. She didn't argue. She just said she'd talk to him. Then social media started. Daniel posted vague captions first. Little polished lines about betrayal, cruelty, abandonment, stories about surviving emotional manipulation, about being discarded without warning. One of them said, some people weaponize housing when they can't control you. That one was especially interesting. He had a car, a salary, a friend's guest room, and enough luggage to survive a minor evacuation when he left my building. A mutual friend named Chloe sent me screenshots with one message underneath. This feels selective. I wrote back, that's a polite word for it. By Wednesday, he had moved from posting to performing. My office called down from reception around 10:20 and said a man had dropped off banana bread and an envelope for me. I hadn't ordered anything. I went downstairs. The bag was sitting on the counter like something harmless. Domestic, sweet, innocent. Reception handed me the card. You know this isn't really us. Call me. No name. No signature. Didn't need one. The handwriting had that deliberate softness Daniel used when he wanted to look more wounded than manipulative. I took a photo of the bag, another of the envelope. Then I told reception that if Daniel showed up again, he wasn't to be let upstairs. The office manager, Denise, came out of her office when she heard enough of the conversation to understand the shape of it. Everything okay? She asked. She had the kind of face that had probably seen a lot of workplace crises over the years and knew exactly when not to ask too much. Yes, I said, but I'm documenting unwanted contact. She nodded once, immediately understanding the seriousness under the calm. Understood. That evening, I got home and found him in my condo lobby, not upstairs. In the lobby, thank God. He was standing there with an overnight bag and that same injured expression he kept using lately, the one designed to make other people feel cruel for having boundaries. Behind the front desk, Noel, the building manager, looked exhausted already. Daniel turned the second he saw me, and his whole face changed into wounded relief, like he had been waiting for me all day. I just need 10 minutes, he said, to get the rest of my things and talk like adults. Noel looked at me. He said he still lives here. I didn't answer right away. I just pulled out my phone, opened the text thread, and handed it to Noel. Then I showed him the building registration with only my name on it. Noel read the screen, blinked once, and handed the phone back. He's not going upstairs. Daniel turned so fast it was almost impressive. This is between me and Naomi. Noel didn't even flinch. Not in my lobby, it isn't. That was the first moment in days I almost smiled. Daniel pushed harder after that. Said I owed him furniture money. Said half the decor was his. Said he had mail delivered there. Said I couldn't just erase him because I was emotional. I looked at him and said, this isn't emotion, it's paperwork. Noel actually laughed. Tried to hide it. Didn't quite make it. Daniel heard it too, and I watched the humiliation flash across his face before it turned into anger. He set the overnight bag on the floor beside the lobby couch and said he'd wait me out. I said, Daniel, I'm not doing this. He stepped closer, dropping his voice again. You can't erase me because you're in a mood. There was something eerie about how quickly he could switch registers. Public victim, private threat, wounded ex, indignant partner. He rotated through them like outfits. I held his gaze. This isn't a mood. For a second, I thought he might keep going. Might push further. Might force the scene he'd been trying to create since Saturday. Instead, he threatened to come back with police. Then he left. He did not come back with police. Probably because police ask questions. And questions are dangerous when your story depends on volume instead of facts. When I finally got upstairs, shut the door behind me, and stood in the quiet kitchen, I realized my hands were shaking. Not because I missed him, not because I doubted myself. Because even when you don't participate in chaos, it still leaves residue. It still gets in your body. Thursday, I booked a consultation with an attorney. $300 for an hour. Best $300 I spent all year. He told me to keep everything. Screenshots, gifts, notes, reception records, lobby incident, all of it. He said if the contact continued, a cease and desist would be smart before things got uglier. Things got uglier fast. That Saturday, Daniel used a delivery app to send cookies to my condo. Under the tape on the box was a folded note. Still yours. Stop being dramatic. I stood in my kitchen looking at those words for a long moment, the cardboard warm from the delivery bag, the smell of sugar rising into the air like something normal, something kind, something meant to blur the edges of what this really was. Then I took pictures, threw the cookies in the trash, and emailed the attorney. He sent the cease and desist that Monday. It cost me $425. For exactly 36 hours, I let myself think maybe that would be enough. It wasn't. The cease and desist didn't calm Daniel down. It insulted him. You could almost track the escalation like a pattern. Predictable. Structured in its own twisted way. When emotions stopped working, he pivoted to control. When control slipped, he escalated. First, he went financial. A Venmo request popped up on my phone late Monday night. $1,280. The note read, shared rent reimbursement and emotional damages. I stared at it for a long second, then let out a quiet breath. Rent reimbursement. In 2 years, Daniel had never paid rent. Not once. He covered groceries occasionally, paid the internet bill one time, then reminded people about it like it was a mortgage contribution. I declined the request. Typed one word. No. Then I blocked the account. For a few hours, it was quiet. Then came the digital phase. New numbers, burner emails, messages that weren't quite threats but weren't harmless either. little comments that tried to sound casual but landed wrong. And then the emojis. A brand new social account started commenting under an old photo from a work fundraiser. Snake emojis, repeated, quiet, petty. I blocked that too. No response, no engagement, just silence. Because silence, I was learning, was the only thing that didn't feed him. Then it got strange. The first time, I almost convinced myself it was coincidence. I stopped at a grocery store near Dublin after work, still in my office clothes, just planning to grab a few things before heading home. I was halfway down the frozen aisle when I saw him. Daniel, standing at the far end, looking at me. Not surprised. Not really. Just there. I felt something in my chest tighten. Not panic yet, but awareness. A shift. Like the air had changed without warning. I didn't approach him. Didn't speak. I grabbed what I needed, kept my movements controlled, steady, like nothing was wrong. Then I left. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Blue looks good on you. I stopped walking. Looked down at myself. Blue blouse. Same one I had worn to the office all day. That was the moment everything changed categories. Annoying became deliberate. Emotional became intentional. I took a screenshot. The next morning, I filed a police report. A week later, a message came from someone unexpected. Her name was Tracy. She said she had recently started seeing Daniel, and that something about his story didn't add up. Even reading the message, I felt a strange kind of clarity settle in. Even his new relationship couldn't hold the version of reality he was selling. I didn't send Tracy everything. Just 3 screenshots. The original text. The lobby note. Blue looks good on you. A few minutes later, Tracy replied. Yeah, I'm out. I stared at the message for a second, then set my phone down. Unexpected ally. Unexpected confirmation. The pattern wasn't just visible to me anymore. Then came the gym. I boxed 3 mornings a week before work. Nothing intense, just enough to clear my head. Routine, structure, something that belonged to me. Ethan from my office, actually, had started going too. We'd grabbed coffee once after class. That was it. Simple, normal, safe. Apparently Daniel knew. That Thursday morning, Ethan and I walked out of the gym together, still talking about whether the office softball team was worth joining. I saw Daniel before I'd processed him, standing beside my car, like he had always been there, like he belonged there. No warning, no message, just presence. Ethan slowed immediately. I could feel the shift in him without looking. Do you want me to go back inside? He asked quietly. I shook my head. No, stay. Daniel smiled. That bright, polished smile people use right before they do something ugly in public. So that's it, he said, looking between us. You replaced me with a coworker, and now I'm the villain. I didn't even react to that part. You showed up at my gym. That was the only sentence that mattered. He ignored it completely. Instead, he turned to Ethan like they were meeting at a mutual friend's party. I'm sorry you got dragged into this, he said smoothly. She moves on fast when she's trying to punish someone. Ethan looked at me. I didn't raise my voice. He's been told not to contact me. That should have ended it. Daniel stepped closer. Too close. His voice dropped. If I can't fix this, he said, eyes locked on mine, I can absolutely ruin the next thing too. Clean, clear, no confusion, no performance, just a statement. Ethan stiffened beside me. I didn't move, didn't react. But inside, something settled into place. Because threats once spoken out loud stop being abstract. They become evidence. The gym manager must have heard enough, because he came out a few seconds later. 2 other members followed behind him, drawn by the shift in energy. And just like that, Daniel changed again. The tears came. The voice cracked. Suddenly he was the one being misunderstood. The one being twisted. The one who just wanted to talk. But the words had already been spoken, and witnesses had heard them. Tears don't erase clarity. I turned to the manager. Would you be willing to write down what you heard? He nodded. Yes. That afternoon, I went back to my attorney, paid another filing fee, started the process for a civil protection order. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel reactive. I felt aligned. Like everything that had been chaotic before was finally organizing itself into something clear, something structured, something that could be handled. The strangest part of that week wasn't Daniel. It was his mother. Her name was Linda. We had never been close, but she had always been polite, quiet, observant in a way that suggested she noticed more than she said. She called me Sunday afternoon. No small talk, no preamble. I don't want details, she said. I just want the truth. So I gave it to her, the short version. Then I forwarded 3 screenshots. I waited for the defense, the excuses, the request for grace. It didn't come. Instead, there was a long silence, then a sigh, heavy, tired. I raised a son, she said slowly, not a storm. I closed my eyes for a second, surprised by the weight of that sentence. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say at first. So I said the only honest thing. Thank you. She told me she would handle what she could. It didn't stop the hearing, but it did something else. It confirmed that I wasn't imagining this, that this wasn't just a messy breakup. This was something else, something that didn't resolve with conversation, something that needed distance and documentation and boundaries that weren't negotiable. Because nobody who respects you follows you through grocery aisles. Nobody who loves you threatens the next person standing beside you. The hearing was scheduled 5 weeks after the text that ended everything. 5 weeks. That was all it took for something that used to feel like a relationship to turn into a case file. I arrived early. Not because I was nervous, because I wanted time to sit in the quiet before everything became structured and formal and recorded. Daniel arrived 10 minutes later. Navy shirt, clean lines, soft expression. The kind of version of himself he wore when he wanted to look reasonable. Like Chaos had learned how to dress for court. His attorney walked beside him. Polished, composed, expensive. The kind of person who could turn emotion into language that sounded acceptable. I didn't look away when he saw me. He did. Just for a second. Then the performance reset. Inside the courtroom, everything slowed down. There was no music, no raised voices, no dramatic pacing. Just facts. Or at least, that's what it was supposed to be. I sat down, placed my folder on the table, and opened it just enough to see the edges of everything inside. Screenshots, call logs, photos, printed messages, the police report, the gym manager's statement, emails from my office documenting unwanted contact. Paper has a kind of quiet authority. It doesn't care who cries harder. It doesn't react. It just stays. Daniel's attorney spoke first, framed everything exactly the way I expected. A difficult breakup, she said. Emotions running high, miscommunication. My client was seeking closure. There was confusion regarding residence, shared property, and communication boundaries. I didn't interrupt, didn't react, because I had already learned something important. Chaos depends on reaction. Structure depends on patience. The judge was an older man, calm in a way that didn't feel performative, just uninterested in nonsense. He flipped through the file slowly, page by page. No expression, no commentary, just reading. Then he stopped, picked up one sheet, and read it out loud. We're not done until I say we're done. The room went quiet. He lowered the paper slightly and looked over his glasses at Daniel. That is not confusion, he said. That is control. Daniel's attorney shifted slightly, adjusting her tone. The subsequent contact, Your Honor, was driven by emotional distress, not intent to threaten. The judge didn't let her finish. He picked up another page. The gym statement. If I can't fix this, I can absolutely ruin the next thing too. Then another. Blue looks good on you. He placed the papers down, looked directly at Daniel. After being told not to contact her, why were you observing her clothing in public and appearing at her gym? Daniel's composure cracked. Not dramatically. Just enough. His eyes filled. His voice softened. I was heartbroken, he said. I made mistakes. I didn't think she would cut me off like that after 2 years. I just wanted to talk. The words were almost convincing. If you didn't know the pattern, if you hadn't lived inside it. The judge didn't react to the emotion. Heartbreak, he said calmly, does not create access. That sentence landed harder than anything else that morning. Clean. Final. True. The order was granted. 1 year. No contact. 300 feet from my condo, my office, my gym. No third-party contact. No social media. No gifts. No accidental appearances. Just distance. Real enforceable distance. When it was over, I stepped out into the hallway and exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. And that's when I saw Linda. She was sitting on a bench, hands folded in her lap, looking smaller than I remembered. Daniel walked past her with his attorney without stopping. She watched him go. Then she stood when she saw me. In her hands was a small tote bag. His last things, she said gently. He left them at my house. I took the bag. Inside, winter scarf, a coffee mug, 2 books, ordinary things. Leftover pieces of something that had already ended. You don't need to keep storing his life for him, she added. I nodded. Thank you. She studied me for a moment, then said something that stayed with me, longer than the court order. For what it's worth, you were the calmest person in all of this. I thought about that. About the nights I had stood in my kitchen, hands shaking. About the moments I had wanted to respond, explain, argue, fix. Calm hadn't come naturally. It had come from a decision. I think calm gets easier, I said, when you stop negotiating with chaos. She nodded, like she understood more than she said. That afternoon, I went home. My home. Set the tote bag on the counter. Put the books in a donation box. Left the mug by the sink. And stood there for a moment listening. No messages. No footsteps in the hallway. No performance waiting to restart. Just quiet. Real quiet. The kind that doesn't feel empty. The kind that feels earned. Since then, life has become something I used to underestimate. Peaceful. I got promoted to senior project manager in February. Better pay, better team, more responsibility, but the kind I choose. I kept going to boxing. Kept my mornings structured, my evenings calm. And slowly, carefully, I started seeing someone. Ethan. We didn't rush it. No intensity disguised as connection. No chaos mistaken for passion. Just consistency. He texts when he says he will. Shows up when he plans to. Doesn't treat basic respect like it's a negotiation. It's amazing how different love feels when it doesn't come with instability attached. As for Daniel, the little I've heard came through people trying not to gossip while absolutely gossiping. He stayed with Linda for a while. A few friends stopped sharing his posts once the timeline started making its way around. The truth has a way of doing that. It doesn't shout. It just stays consistent. And consistency is hard to argue with. The biggest thing I learned from all of this is simple. Chaos survives on negotiation. On one more conversation, one more explanation, one more chance to fix something that was never meant to be fixed. But some people don't want clarity. They want access. They want the ability to step in and out of your life whenever their emotions spike and call it love, because that sounds better than control. Daniel didn't lose me because of one text. He lost me because that text revealed what he believed love was, something he could define. Pause. Resume. Own. And the moment I answered like I had equal authority over my own life, he unraveled. That unraveling wasn't romance. It wasn't heartbreak. It was entitlement. And the truth is, the relationship ended the moment I stopped confusing chaos with passion.